what is a hospice at home service and how does it differ from hospice care delivered on an inpatient ward or in hospital, for example?
There are many types of hospice at home, but the one that we've developed is a 24-hour service, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It needs to have a dedicated, compassionate team who are skilled in end-of-life care. The hospice at home team were in a different league. Their compassion and expertise were immediately obvious.
What would a future hospice at home service look like? Welcome to the Life and Loss podcast. I'm Hannah and today we have a special guest, Jacquie, a dedicated nurse who leads the Hospice at Home project at Forest Holme and was instrumental in setting up the Hospice at Home service in the Macmillan Unit in Christchurch. With a passion for compassionate care, Jacquie has been making a real difference in the lives of patients and their families. Welcome, Jacquie.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. So your background is in nursing, so I'm interested to know how you started out in nursing and why you decided to specialise in hospice care.
I think from as far ago as a child, which was many years ago, I really enjoyed being around people and I used to go on different errands for them. And I decided then I wanted to be a nurse to help people. Mm. Following that, my next door neighbour became very poorly when I was a nurse, and she was admitted to the local hospice. I went in daily to see her because she was a single person by herself. And there was just such a love, compassion, care. Everybody was trying to do whatever she needed. And she wanted to come home. She did come home for a few days, but then got readmitted because there wasn't enough care at home. And I think that gave me a real insight as to what hospice care was like and also how could it be in a home. So the rest is history because since then I became a social worker and I put the two together. So a nurse and a social worker, and managed to get a hospice at home service off the ground. And I think it's just so important and my passion.
Yeah. And so for anyone listening today, what is a hospice at home service and how does it differ from hospice care delivered on an inpatient ward or in hospital, for example?
So there are many types of hospice at home, but the one that we've developed at the Macmillan Unit is a 24-hour service, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So basically every moment of every day is covered by the team. If you imagine taking away the walls of a hospice and then taking that team to somebody's house, which is what we do as a service. So we will provide personal care, which is washing and seeing to all those personal things. We also deal with the symptom management, so we will give medications as is required to make the patient more comfortable. Mm. We'll also make sure there's the right equipment in the house because when somebody first of all goes home, it changes and they need different equipment. So we make sure there's the right equipment. We also look after the family, and that is key because the family are there when we're not there. So we give a lot of emotional and psychological support. The emphasis is listening to what the patient and the family want. So we don't say we will do set visits at certain times. We ask them what they would like and how they would like their care. So some patients will say they want 1 visit a day. Other patients will say they want 4 or 5 visits. Other patients want evening visits and just want to know that we're available. So we have planned visits and we have SOS visits. The planned visits can be throughout the 24 hours, including overnight. The SOS are when they suddenly need us.
Okay.
And it could be any time. They just phone the duty mobile that we've always got in the pocket of the person that's in charge for that day. So they can always get us. It's not an answering machine.
That
makes a huge difference.
Just a huge relief to people just to have that number accessible, that they know they're going to get through to a real person that can help them when they feel really vulnerable in a difficult period of their life. So the Macmillan Unit is separate to the large Macmillan Charity. Macmillan is in Christchurch but supported by Macmillan Caring locally, a local charity. Can you tell us some stories about the hospice at home service there and how it's impacted real families in the community?
Yes, so what I've done is, I thought you might ask that question. So I've actually brought 2 stories that families have given me themselves and what it meant to them. So I'm going to read those because I think they are the real stories more than my interpretation.
Absolutely.
So the first one is from a daughter, and she says, I came over from Australia and spent time with my dad when he got really sick. Your wonderful staff came to visit him and care for him daily, often several times a day. It was the most wonderful support for him and for my mum. Mum was finding it very hard to cope with very little medical support until your angels arrived. They genuinely cared for them both. Their kindness, care and professionalism were nothing I have ever seen. I know that job takes a special kind of person, but these guys were pure gold, all so beautiful. Again, a million thanks from me as a daughter. Your staff truly made a massive difference to my mum and dad and allowed my dad to pass at home with their care, which is what he wanted. And the second story is from a family member, and I've been given permission to use his name. I'm writing on behalf of Ken's family to express our thanks to Hospice at Home team because of their support. He was able to fulfil his wish of dying at home, surrounded by close family. The way the team achieved this was exemplary, and so I would like to go into a bit of detail. She then describes what was wrong with Ken and just the sort of treatment that he needed. And the biggest thing was, it was coming up to a bank holiday and they were getting desperate to have some support. The Hospice at Home team went to do a visit and did an assessment, and that evening there was a ray of hope. It was a huge relief to talk to staff on Sunday to schedule a visit, and on Monday to actually work out the times that we would like. The care up until this point had been caring and professional, much appreciated. However, the Hospice at Home team were in a different league. Their compassion and expertise were immediately obvious, as was their approach to us as a family. Several things stood out and made their approach different. The team are excellent communicators. From clearly explaining hard to hear information to distracted listeners, through to a hug for Ken's wife, it was always pitched just right. We always felt informed of Ken's condition and were amazed of how it was likely to change. And I think both those stories just give a slight insight into the care of hospice at home and what we're trying to achieve. We want to give patients choice and to hear their voice as to how they want it. It's their end of life and they only get one chance. So we need to get it right.
Absolutely. And it sounds like it has such a huge impact on the families that you're able to help. We've now reached the halfway point in this interview. If this episode resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Our hope is that by sharing these stories, we can help just one other person living with a life-limiting illness feel less isolated. If you are able, share your thoughts by commenting below. So on the reverse of that then, Jacquie, what happens if the hospice at home service isn't available to families at home?
So what I would use is a personal situation. My husband was end of life and dying at home. He was under Forest Holme, so he had consultant care and specialist nurse there. But because there was no hospice at home, we didn't have that contact with a team, a practical team. So one evening he became very ill. He started bleeding, had other complications, and I was trying to get hold of somebody to come and support. I couldn't get through to any services at all. Even in my position, I felt very distressed and very anxious about it. In the end, I phoned an ambulance. The ambulance came and they were very kind, very caring, but they didn't know his history. They didn't know that we had a plan in place, that the professionals had put a plan in saying exactly how to treat if this did arise. So the first thing they wanted to do was take him into hospital. It was very clear his wish was not to go into hospital. We knew we didn't have many days left, and that was his one thing, to die at home and not go into hospital. I had to be very clear and show them the plan, explain the situation. Meanwhile, sitting there holding my husband's hand while he was bleeding very heavily. What would have made a difference is if hospice at home had been involved, they would have known the plan, they would have known his background, they would have known his wishes. They would have been able to support me both physically but also emotionally and psychologically. Fortunately, I had my daughter with me who was also a nurse, and we were able to sit there, hold his hand until the bleeding calmed down. But it caused a huge amount of distress with the thought that he was going to end up in hospital in an A&E department, which he did not want. Once the ambulance crew realised that actually he wanted to stay at home, we then worked as a team. But had hospice at home been involved, we wouldn't have had to have gone through all of that. I would have been able to phone them, they would have come, and they would have been there. And that makes a huge difference. He died within 48 hours, and thankfully he died peacefully at home.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jackie. So what barriers are there to stopping a hospice at home service being set up in different areas?
The biggest barrier is funding. It needs to have a dedicated, compassionate team who are skilled in end-of-life care. We deal with patients in the last 4 weeks of life, and the symptoms change very quickly. The deterioration can happen very quickly. We need to get people out of hospital who want to die at home, to give them that choice. And without the funding, we can't provide that service. So that is the key thing, really. We've got an amazing team at the moment, and we're fortunate to be able to have that in place. But what we want to do is to go across to Poole as well and supply a service there. But that takes finances.
Absolutely. So if you could wave a magic wand and design the service to the standard that you would like, what would a future hospice at home service look like for patients in Poole and Wimborne?
So to have a 24-hour service, 7 days a week, 365 days across the whole 3 areas. To have enough staff to be able to cover that geographically and to be able to respond. So it's not just the planned visits, it's those unknown moments when suddenly somebody is in pain and they need you to go out, or suddenly somebody's becoming anxious. We need the staff to be able to do that. And I think that would be my wish, that we would be able to give people choice in this area to be able to be cared for at home if that's what they wish, to share with the families and to be able to listen, to not be rushing, but to actually sit and listen to what they want and how their plan is.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And thank you for listening to the Life and Loss podcast. If you'd like more information on our work, you can visit our website, which is foresthomehospice.org.uk. Thank you. If you found this episode useful, click the subscribe button. Share this episode with a friend or loved one, and don't forget to give us a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means so much.